Hi Radhika, it's Jack again. How are you? Sorry I haven't been able to get back to you as much as I could as of late, but it's been kind of busy here. So I just want to go through, first of all, I'm just going to frame through the whole thing just to see what I think. We'll probably play through it first.
Oh, that reminds me, I'm not going to be able to play poker with you guys on Friday. Why not? I'm going to see this occupational hypnotherapist, man. Dude, an occupational hypnotherapist? Yeah, I know. Man wants me to go. I think it might help.
Okay, so with this guy here, there's a few things that you could probably work with. Okay, so here he holds absolutely still. Get that initial movement. I like the way you've done that. You've doubled over the motions with his shoulders. That works, but there's a definite little pop inside here. So let me just get my pen up. So from here, and frame 82 to 83, that's way too much movement. So you want to get something in between there, an extra hand gesture, and plus you'll notice that as you go from this pose here, so we've got this shape, this shape here to this shape here, and then it hits an invisible wall so it doesn't progress any further, and kind of rotates around in place. So just check your curves with your IK handle to make sure that that it moves easy out from there. So if you're doing a motion like that on your spacing chart, it will start off with big movements and then slowly compress as it comes out. So if his hand is moving out from the book as it is here, that would be your first frame, and if you imagine that's the arc that he's traveling along, and if that's his last frame over here, no, that's not the arc there, but if that's the arc stopping there, you want to have one big movement here, maybe another one there, another one there, and then pad it into that wall. Don't just hit the wall. So your second hand shape would be about there, the third one about there, and then the next one you can keep compressing them in, not just go boom boom and then hold it there. It's a big noticeable thing, and then it's rotating around space. And if he's going to do that, if he's going to turn around, that rotation would also engage his shoulder, so you'd have more of a shoulder movement, so that kind of movement. And this is one of the big lessons that I've got out of all of this sort of stuff. Arms all originate from the shoulders and the clavicles. Your elbows and your wrists and your hands are just things which are coming along for the ride. So if you're going to do any kind of gesture, your gesture, and experiment with this yourself, your gesture comes from your shoulder. It doesn't come from your wrist, it doesn't come from your elbow. Your elbow adjusts, your wrist articulates, but most of the big gesture movements come from your shoulder. So try to get your motion, most of your animation coming from your shoulder. So if he's pulling his hand off the book, do that from the shoulder. Don't animate the hand. The hand tends to keep a relationship with the forearm through the hand up to the fingers. So most of our movements, unless we're specifically trying to grab something, are just coming along for the ride. So if he's holding up the book and he does something, he goes, man, that motion is primarily coming from my shoulder. It's not coming from my wrist. So if you don't find that you're animating your shoulders that much, which you can see that there's not much going on there, then you want to think about it again. So that even that motion there of rotating the hand, believe it or not, it comes from largely from the shoulder. And if that happens, it will be multiplied through the wrist and through the elbow. So if you've got that rotation in the hand, you'll see that largely through the elbow coming up as well. Okay, so here, this is a classic, this is the opposite of hitting a wall, this is a float. So you're just sitting there, going up, not really doing anything, and then all of a sudden picking up. So you have to work out what's going on. Is it being held? And it is held. Have your movements have your nice cushions of a movement coming out and then cushioning in with the hand, or don't move it at all. But having it floating like that is something that's very obvious. And there, the last movement was a bit sudden, and you want to try maybe an anticipation before that and then go down. So here, if he's just going to go humph, have him, before you go have a down motion, go the opposite direction. So have a chest up and then head down, so like that. Okay, there we got a pop and the hand goes through the table. So there's a pop there in the elbow. And pop is, anytime you hear someone use the word pop, it just means that a certain thing moves more than it could normally do in a frame. And then a hand creeps mysteriously through the table, and then erase through that butter there. So just check that is working. So if you find that your hand has to go through the table, think about how you do it. You might end up having to bend your arm inwards, which means that the elbow goes out, and then bring it over the top of the table. So if your hand was down to the side like this, and you have to bring it over the table, which is here, you might have to bring it sideways and then over. Because to get it like that requires you to turn your elbow and then put on. And that's why people always have their hands going through tables, because they don't think about what's happening with their elbows and their shoulders. So most likely his elbow is going to be, his hand is going to be on his lap like that. And then when he puts it on the table, he'll lift it up and then across onto the table that way. So his hand will be down on his lap there, and across a bit, and down. Let's erase that one. Okay, so that way it's not going to end up on the table. So you ended up having the hand about there, and if that's the case, you've got the hand there, it means that for those previous frames you needed to have the hand kind of tracking across there. So you'd have your hand coming up and then across, but you can't have it going through the table. So, and here we've got a bit of a, and when the hand's coming off the table, it's going back into the table again. Think again how, if that was to happen, if he's going like that, he'd probably lift his arm up first, his fingers might stay on the table, and then he comes across. So here, to lift your hand up, oops, sorry, just recording other stuff at the same time. Lift the hand up, so you probably see that the elbow would come up, the fingers would stay on the table, the back of the hand would come up to initiate that movement, and then when the hand is actually up in the air and the elbow is out, then he would start to reach across and touch himself on the shoulder. And when he touches himself on the shoulder, have an overgrab as well, so you don't just have it coming across like a big mitten. Have the hand reach out and fold across the arm, so you see the fingers out ready to grab, and then have them curl around the arm. It just gives, even if it's small, we anticipate everything in advance. So even from the moment when I'm taking my hand off the table, I'm anticipating my hand open, I'm reaching across and grabbing. So it's all anticipation in advance. Now here we've got a bit of body lock. When you move across, you have this entire shape absolutely staying still that whole time. I think I said in my last note to you that it's really, really important to make sure if you're doing this and you're leaning across, that's a full body movement. So if you're doing that, you'd be doing this, and everything would move across with it. So if we're here and we move across, then the hand is going to move down, the shoulder is going to probably also move down. There'd be a change in the shape of the body, and maybe the hand would pull back, and this hand might pull back a bit as well. Most of the time actions are not isolated, they have to occur throughout the entire body. And same here, even with this thing, there's a pop there, pop, pop, pop in the hand. See that? There's one pop there, and then the hand changes direction. And again, don't worry about pops. I hate when people are talking about pops, but anyway. The big thing about here, more than anything else, is that his pose is just staying there. He's not working in a pose. And it'd be better to have him do nothing at all and to try and get one small part of the body moving and the rest of the body not moving. So with that gesture from holding the hand on the his bicep down to there, it would require more than what's happening with the body. You just got the torso moving there. So if I'm doing that, holding it, and I go across like that, I don't just move my body side to side, I move it forward, I move my head, go through it, the entire body, go everything that's visible on the screen, and say, okay, from this pose to this pose, what has changed? And make sure that you make something happen. And if nothing happens, explain to yourself why nothing happens. I think that's one thing that's going to improve your work a lot, is to be accountable about what's going on with all the different body parts. And say from one pose to another, what's moved, why has it moved, and should it have moved? If it hasn't moved, more importantly, what hasn't moved and why hasn't it moved? And if you can't say why it hasn't moved, then don't. Make sure it's always moving, even small amounts. So here there's a very much A to B pose. Try and overlap that. If he's doing this thing here, that also change his face. If he's doing that, he might also turn around. He might do something with his upper back. Just something, needs something. And with that motion here, again, you've got this same problem of moving the thing which is drawing your attention, which is the arm, but forgetting about the rest of it. So in a shift like that, from here to here, if I've got my weight down like that and I reach forward, already you can feel my lower back is engaging. So for that pose from here to here, I would expect to see something more happening with the body. So there's a shift from this shoulder from being over here to over here. This arm comes in there, that's all fine. So again, the hand, all the major animation points, great, but you need to also pair it in with the gestural changes as to what would happen if you were to move a hand like that. Okay, so that's that guy here, number one. Now this guy here, I wouldn't have him moving as much. I don't think I'd move a book around that much. If you're holding a book, you want to hold it pretty still, and you would just be moving your eyes. And if anything, the book would move. If as he's thinking, he would move it down, but he's not moving it side to side because it's really hard to keep focus on anything at the moment at any time and when it's moving. So if I'm moving my book in front of me, that would only work if I was on in an earthquake. So keep the book rock solid. The only movements you should see should correspond with his body movements, because it's really hard to focus on something, and the only time he would let go would be if he'd said something and he's reacting to it and he's putting the book down. So keep the book still. Okay, so same thing here. Whenever you move something, whenever you change, so this would be all rock solid, and then when he's reacting to what's being said to him, you could have the book drop, and when he's holding the book, holding your book like this, and when he lets go, it changes the dynamics of the pose. So here I'm straight with my body behind my book, and as soon as I let go, I shift my body to the side, I put the book to the side, and I balance myself. So here when he puts his hand to the side, the book can't stay still. It needs to move to support that balance. So this arm is out to the side, you're shifting your overall distribution of weight. So when you have a weight shift like that, you need to have a body shift as well. So that would shift across, and possibly also a slight change in the head shape as well, at least the position of the head, to allow for that change, because you can't just let go of something without it changing the way that it configures the whole body. So that's something you need to go through every one of your poses. Every time you have anything moving, like a hand, you can't keep the rest of the things locked. So you have to think about what happens when I move this book, and video yourself if you don't believe me. So this one we've been through. And there's something also about his elbows. Generally, if we're sitting holding a book in front of us, one of the things we tend to do is we don't have our elbows behind us. This is something I hate about Bishop, but you have to deal with it. If you want him to look natural, generally we have our upper arm flowing in line with our bodies. It gives us a good line of action. If you don't do that, then you have this weird tangent coming out the side there. I actually much prefer it when his body, and I wish they'd give us a different colour besides black, is sitting there in line there. And if you can't get it to sit there, just maybe put the hands further out in front and have the book at a different position. But have the arms coming down naturally to the side and it'll look natural. Having elbows poking out the back never looks natural on anything, and even if you have to change your rig a little bit. But this pokey out elbow I've never seen. I mean, look at your video reference. You can see here on your video reference, I'll just move my frame so I can have a look, just albeit quickly. 1 second. Even on this frame here, you can see your arm is straight down along the side of your body. So that's something you want to keep in mind. That's just the rig which is forcing you to do weird things. And here, again, the feeling of weight is not there because you don't have that arm coming down the side there. Generally, our arms are heavy and they're being hung from our shoulders like weights. So you want to have your hands wherever, your upper arms, wherever possible, hanging down like pendants from your shoulder. If they're not doing anything, just have them hanging down there. So you see how that one hangs down, the arm can go against it. This one hangs down and can hold the book out here in front of you. But this sort of thing, and especially when you start to rotate the back, you can see that your arms are matching your spine, and you don't want that. You want, as the body comes up, that shape to stay straight down. Okay, all the way down there. So those arms should stay straight. At least the upper arm should kind of stay flat with the vertical line. And this sort of thing never happens as well. If you want to rotate that book, you can't not engage your elbows. For starters, your elbows would be straight like that, but if I'm holding my book in front of me here and I rotate it around, it's I'm holding my book and it does affect my upper arms, because you have to think about it. You are definitely involving your biceps when you do that sort of motion. Okay, so you need to have some kind of change in that upper arm configuration as well. Okay, heaps of stuff from me. Hope you're all well. Talk to you soon. Bye.